Hi everyone, it's Lynda here from Banjo's Bead House and welcome to the June 2026 Seed Bead Inspiration Box. So this month we are playing with all fun shades of green from our inspiration picture of stone. The inspiration pick actually was from Amazonite, but what I picked up in it was some lovely little flecks of different colors, and that actually led me down the path to sesame or kiwi jasper, which is what we're using in this month's seed bead project. So I'm going to tip you down and we'll take a look at a couple of the things that you'll find in your box and what I came up with for this month's project. Excuse me. So I'm working with three shades of seed beads from the box. I am working with, this is the 91865, sorry, the grey. The green is 94701 and the grey or gunmetal is the 451. There is three other shades of seed beads in the box. They're the ones I'm playing with because they're the ones that I most resemble the colors in the Kiwi Jasper stone. So I love this mixture of the green, this beige, which is the more sesame jasper, and then just these like little hematite flakes, but I'm not sure what that is. I didn't go that far into the stone origins, but I just loved this little color mix, and it really spoke to me. And I thought this shape was also rather fun. I hadn't seen this coffin style of shape before, so I thought it'd make for a fun seed bead embroidery project, which is what we're planning on for this month. I also picked up, and I've dropped one of them off my mat already, but I have some ovals and rounds in the Sesame Jasper as well. The round is the one that's disappeared from my mat. We also have some fun little rondelle beads, which we're actually going to use in the rope. So that was a fun little way of doing a different style of rope. And for part of the choose your own adventure element of this month's box, I have some hematite cabs. I have some jet hematite two-hole seed beads that you could also play around with. I have some kites and some paisley duos. And I also have these two-hole cabs in a color name that now escapes my brain, but it will be in the notes of this video and of course on the packet when you pull it out. So I apologize for that. I think it's the chalk lazuli blue from memory. I know it's a chalk white something, but it's a very pretty grayy bluey tone that just went really, really well with the gray in this Sesame Jasper. So yeah, that is where you get to have some fun with different elements, as I said, and it's kind of choose your own adventure. So for this month, you would have seen from the inspiration pick, this is the pendant that I created for mine. I've got my coffin here, I've got my round, I've got those two little two-hole cabochons. And then I've got a couple of other elements that you don't see that are hiding holes. And I just had fun just doing simple layers of seed beads around it just to build up texture. Finished it off with the demi rounds that are in your kit and the green suede that is in your kit. So just playing again around with that grey. And for the rope, I had fun experimenting with something a little bit different. So for the rope, we, as I said, are using these rondelle sesame jasper beads. I'm using some seed beads and I'm anchoring it all around a little mini gem duo. So it's a fun little component style rope, and you will of course have a toggle. It had not arrived at the time of filming, so you will not see it in these early stages, but it will be there by the time I am filming the final stages of this one for you guys. But this was my little fun sample. I am actually going to recreate this sample, but I'll speak to you along the way of how you can choose your own adventure. So yeah, actually we might do a bit of that now. So you can choose your own adventure in that if you which cabs you want to use. Wish I had the round on my mat. I'm just seeing if it's fallen off to the side. Nope, it's disappeared somewhere. I will have to find that. So you could choose, as I said, you've got a round, you've got this fun little oval. You could just choose to do the oval and the round together and save this for something else. You could, instead of my little two-hole cab, drop in the hematites on one side. You could just choose to do a hematite at the top, and just do a grey combination that way. Equally, you could choose just to do the little drop at the top, or go in for the oval and the little drop at the top. Um, I also played around with, which is how you've got so many of these little other design elements to choose from. You could also drop in the paisley duos and, do something along those lines. Stitch around it that way, make them a little feature and, your little breaking point. If you don't like the paisley duos, you could have picked up the kites. Oops, that was another paisley. You could pick up the kite. I've just got to find the other one on my mat and do a similar sort of thing. So it's up to you. That's the fun of choose your own adventure, is do what speaks to you with this kind of layout. As I said, I'm going to replicate the original design so you can see how I put that one together. But this gives you an idea of some of the different ways that you could put one together for yourself. And as always, I would love to see what you come up with. And of course, as I do that, I find the round. So again, I'm going for the round with the little guys on the side. So that's the basis for my design. You could, drop in, as I said, the elements of the hematite cabs and go for something a little bit bigger. You could also change this out for the oval on top and do something completely different. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what everybody comes up with this month as they go and choose their own little adventure and come up with something different or copy me. I honestly don't mind. I'm just looking forward to seeing what you guys do. So to get started, I have already glued down my cab ahead of filming, and I've also anchored my thread onto the back of it. This is the felt which is in your kit. I have just trimmed off the corners on mine, so I'm not dealing with sharp edges. Your thread tends to catch a little less. I am working with Fireline for this part, and I've probably put on way too much, but I always tend to do that. And I actually used smoke fire line when I came around to do the edges here. So you can see here I had a little bit of smoke rub against my suede. So we need to be careful when we're doing that. And some of my stitches, which went a little bit big, are a little visible. The reason I did that is because I did not do any other embellishment on top of my Toho demi rounds, which I used for the edging. And I did not want crystal fireline obviously sitting across that. The smoke actually sits really nicely across those and just blends in. If you were doing a picot edge, you could certainly then change the color of your thread and try and match it more to this green or to the beads that you were playing around with on your picot. Highly encourage you guys to think about, picots, fringes. You could also change your orientation entirely and put the bigger piece at the bottom. This is all the fun that you guys get to play with design. You could also do a side-by-side design, Lots of things for you guys to consider. But let's get started. So I am working with my size 8 seed beads. I'm working with that in the grey and the green, and then scaling everything down to the 11s, which is why the grey 11s are out on my mat. So as always, I am just going to start with a very simple um, pick up 4, go back up through 2, pick up 4, keep going around, baseline of seed bead embroidery. Now I did start this further back on my stone. That is to help me I would recommend doing it on the longer stretches of this odd shaped stone, just to help you wrap around all of these corners, and there is lots of corners in this piece. So we are pulling through. And don't worry, I'm not going to make you guys watch me do all of this. This video is in multiple parts so that we can just get to the important parts and you're not spending lots of time watching me do the same thing over and over and over again, because that's no fun for anybody. Okay, so we've got our first 4 on. So again, it was bring my thread up, pick up 4 beads, go down, come back up through the middle, out through the 2, which is what we've just done. And then we're picking up 4 more beads. Now, if you want to do this and work with 2 beads at a time instead of 4 beads at a time, by all means, go ahead. If that is where you are more comfortable in doing seed bead embroidery, go for it. As I get a knot and completely throw it out of my hands. Just be careful of thread tangles and make sure you don't pull your needle through one. So we are around and I often get asked, why do I put such a long thread on my work? Well, in part for this project is because as I am running my way through all of this, I'm actually going to run a stitch back around all of it, and I'm doing that on every single row, trying to flatten it out. I'm also trying to keep a loose tension on this time around than my first one. I've got some buckling because of my tight tension. It's a problem I have. I can't help but pull things tight. For those of you with looser tension, I admire that in you because you get much flatter pieces of work. But I just like to think of my tension as texture, so it's my way of coping. The thing I love about these grey beads is there's just some lovely variance in the shade of the grey, and it's just such a soft colour, and against this stone it really does pick up the sesame aspect of the Kiwi Jasper. So as you can see there, as I naturally pulled, it wants to pull those 3 beads around. So I'm just gently with my needle tucking those back because I want those beads more connected to that curve. It wasn't so bad there because it's a subtle curve. This is a much harsher curve. So you do want to just tuck those beads back before you pop your needle down. And then we'll come back up. So I am, as you can see, I'm just putting my fingernail against that, tugging. That's just to make sure it is a nice close fit right up against my stone. 4 more on. And again, with that corner, I'm just tucking that to make sure we get that bead exactly where we need it to be. Coming back up. So one thing you'll notice is I don't have my second stone glued down already. That is because I'm not the best at predetermining all of my spacing. I know some designers can figure that out really, really easy, glue everything down, and it just works. I am not that lucky. So for me, I like to do my work in layers, and that allows me to see exactly where I can glue something down. So you will see me as I get, after I've gotten part of this one set, we will glue the next one down and do some work around that before doing the work around all of the layers. So this is a multi-part process, and it's a great way if you are starting out or if you're working with an unfamiliar shape like this one is, of trying to figure out how you're going to get around it, how things might join up to it. For me, it made the design process and how I got to my final design a little bit easier because I had an idea of how the beads around this were shaping up, and what shape beads I wanted to put alongside it as I did my join. What sort of details do I want to put in my join? Now, of course, if you're working on top of a, like even say a grey suede and embellishing this, you may have chosen to leave some suede showing, then that's a different proposition again, as opposed to working on straight onto a backing material, and then covering all of your work. So lots of different ways you can think about how you're going to do your projects. And again, it's always fun to see everyone come up with something a little bit different. Oops. So we're nearly at the end of this first part, where I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework before we come back. And again, just using my fingernail. Sorry that's on skewering view, but fingernail just there, give it a nice tug. It's just making sure all of those beads are sitting as flat as possible, nestled right up against that stone, because I don't want any weird gaps. Of course, edging around nice round surfaces is always much easier, and far more recommended for beginner projects. But, you know, we do like to challenge ourselves, and this stone certainly is a fun shape to be playing around with. Although I'm not quite sure I like the name calling it Coffin, but that's what my supplier called it. And it does have the shape of one, but I liked the 6 sides of it and thought it'd be a fun challenge. Oops, just got a little bit of buckling there, and that's partly why I am going to thread back around again. And, it's also the trickiness of the corners. And you'll notice that I started on this side, worked my way around because this is the harder side. Being the narrower end of the stone, it is a little bit more tricky. Okay, hopefully we're approaching our last pickup of beads. Oops. That one might just need me, as I'm going around, to tuck in over that thread just to anchor that bead in. Just little things to keep an eye on, and that one's obviously going to give me a little bit of trouble. So we'll try and address that before we go too much further. So I did pick up 4 beads. I think 4 might be too much. I think 3 is a much cleaner fit around that corner. So it's always good to pick up what you think you need, maybe go one more, and give it a test. Now, because we picked up 3, I'm just going to go through 1 bead there and align in my 3, and yep, I think that's going to work. It gives me some room to wiggle around that troublesome bead. So I'm just going to go down again and try not to send everything flying. Am I the only one who sends everything flying, or do you guys do that too? And we've got our thread twisted. There we go. So we've got our first row of stitching on. Before I go and do my second row of stitching, there's a little bit of looseness there, and there's a little bit of looseness there that I'm not 100% happy with. So I'm just going to move my needle up, and I'm just going to do a tack over thread, just aimed at getting the thread. So you can see I'm angling my needle down underneath because I just want to bring that thread in just to give a little bit of control over that little bead. It's causing me some grief. So we fixed that little problem. Now I just want to go fix the one on this side. So you only need to do this if you've got beads that are a little bit out of control like mine. If not, you get to go straight to the next part of what I'm going to be doing. See, and now those two beads that were causing me just to pucker out a little bit and nicely tucked in and under control. So it is worth taking the time if you do have a little bit of a trouble spot to try and address that at this stage so that you can keep your work looking great. So I'm just going back out roughly where we started from. And I'm actually going to cheat and pick up the very end bead here because it just makes it easier on the needle. And I'm going to run, as I said, my thread all the way through all of the beads. This is, again, it just gives me a chance to tighten up if I need it. Fills these beads with a little bit more thread so they tend to behave a little bit better. And gives me one more chance just to review everything, make sure I'm happy before we proceed to the next step. So that I think will be fine once the bead goes down next to it. And if not, I will come back and do another slip stitch. It's the bead on the other side of where I did my first one. So just moving my needle to pull all my thread through. And it just allows me to go through those last ones as well. And for good measure, I'm just going to pop up through the first 5 beads on that side. Just so when I can do a nice tug, I'm pulling on a straight on my longer section and I can pull right across that bottom bit there as well. So we have our first complete row on. So I am going to now, and I'm happy with everything. So I'm just going to take my needle down through one side, through the inside track, and of course get a thread tangle. And bring it back up down here, ready to add on my next row. So your little homework coming out of this video is, if you are following along with my pattern, you can see that's my grey row. I then did a green row in the 8, and then I did a row of the 11s. This little join here is all of the 11s from this complete circuit. It then got joined back up after I did the mathematics for this section. So however you are doing your first cab, if you're doing this one around, whatever you're doing, do whatever you want to do up until you get to the point where you want to join in your second cab. Okay? Then come back, and what we will do is talk about the mathematics of creating that gap, gluing that cab down, and then from there we'll talk about what we do next. So I hope you've enjoyed part 1, and I will see you on part 2. Enjoy the homework. Bye for now.